Hi everyone. Today we have Natasha Nazerali on again. Hey Tash.
My bestie. I love doing this with you.
Me too. We did an episode maybe a couple months ago now talking about the five biological laws of GNM that everyone loved. So Tash is back and we're diving into a little bit more detail about femininity and anatomy and your Freya course. So can you elaborate? I remember we spoke about so much before that I wanted to dive into, but how has one, like being male or female, how does that impact GNM? Like how to being in your masculine, or maybe you're female but you're in your masculine, how does that change? I know that's a broad question, but just how does that impact everything?
Yeah, so German new medicine is the foundation of the five biological laws of nature. So it's a body of wisdom that teaches you how our body works in synchronicity and harmony with nature. So my relationship to learning these laws really allowed me to get in touch with what does it mean to be feminine or what does it mean to be masculine from the perspective of nature. And nature is really all about survival and making sure that the generation that comes forth, the next generation, our offspring that we birth, is better than the one before. And I think even philosophically, we know that to be true, or, ancestrally, there are many indigenous First Nation tribes that go 7 generations backwards and 7 generations forwards. So it really is about the understanding of what are the natural laws that come into play when we look at sex, and how can we most embody those so that we're not looking at femininity from a perspective of, gosh, what modern day society might crowd you with so many belief systems or so
Mhm.
much dogma or comparing yourself to other women around you, and just get in touch with, wait, what actually feels true for me? What feels true for the way in which my biology is responding to my environment? What's the message that my body is sending me? And how can I come to the truth of that embodiment? And the Freya course is a course developed by Dr. Sasha Tesic, which was he is a doctor who worked with Dr. Hammer previously.
Mhm.
And it's a really valuable course that teaches you the biology of the masculine. So he takes a small group of women at a time and teaches them the biology of masculinity so that they can achieve better, more harmonious relationships with the men in their life, whether it be their husbands, whether it be their sons, their brothers, their colleagues. And it just offers a deep dive into understanding the opposite sex.
Mm.
It's a really amazing course, and there's a lot of people within the community that are learning with him. And then I teach personally with Dr. Melissa Sell, who's another amazing colleague of mine. We teach an 11-week course program called Biological Woman, where you can actually learn the entire feminine anatomy through this paradigm. So you can learn the emotional roots behind the female reproductive organs in the body. You can learn how the cycle works and how different traumas and conflicts that we go through will shift and change our female cycle. And you can get together, with an amazing community of women while doing it. And it's really a deep dive into learning your biology as a female from top to bottom through this lens, and also getting practical tools in how to integrate this wisdom into your daily life.
Have you noticed when you do your course, are there some common, maybe the most common problems or issues that women go through? Is there kind of a top one or two that you've noticed that you've helped somebody through that's sort of a general it, issue that the women in this day and age have experienced? And then how do you resolve that with.
Absolutely. So I think one of the most common things that women really love to learn how to live in alignment with is the female cycle, right? So we have our menstrual cycle. It's what makes us the life givers, the life carriers, the creatrix, the the wisdom women, whatever you want to associate that with. But our hormones are constantly shifting as we are ovulating and going into the menstrual cycle. So
Mm-hmm.
it's an integral part of our biology that ensures fertility. And it shifts and changes depending on the conflicts that we go through. So how long your cycle is or how short your cycle is
Mm-hmm.
can help me identify with accuracy what programs, what conflicts, what traumas you might have experienced. And the
Mm-hmm.
more you work on resolving those, the more that you actually notice biological shifts where, oh, okay, my cycle is actually shifting. So in nature, we have the lunar cycle. It's about 28 and a half days. And actually, biologically, the female cycle in nature would also be 28 and a half days, so that you're living in synchronicity and harmony with nature. So if your cycle is anywhere shorter than that, and if your cycle is anywhere longer than that, what it's showing you, like a messenger in your body, there's something here that you need to look at. There's a reason why your cycle is shifting in this way. And it has to do with hormones, estrogen and testosterone. So estrogen is that feminine hormone, right? We're passive, we're receptive, we're even a little bit more emotional. Yeah, maybe you want to say more depressive. And testosterone would be more active. I'm action oriented, slightly more manic on that scale, right? We would say.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're shifting between the two. So when I'm higher in testosterone, right, my
Mm-hmm.
cycle is going to be longer because I have slightly more testosterone. When
Mm-hmm.
I'm higher on estrogen, my cycle is going to be slightly shorter. And that's where we get into an area that's a lot more advanced within the biological laws. But once you actually understand it, it's like learning a new language. You're like, oh, okay, I get what's happening within my cycle and I get what's happening within my biology. So the temporal lobe is a brain area that lies just above the ear.
Mm-hmm.
And when we, as a right-handed female, right, or female in general, because the left-hander has this too, it just falls on the opposite side.
Mm-hmm.
When we go through a sexual conflict, yeah, it actually falls into the temporal lobe and it lowers our estrogen and raises our testosterone. So what does that mean? Well, it means that when I experience what we call a sexual frustration. So that is corresponding to the organ of the cervix, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So the
Mm-hmm.
cervix in our reproductive area is a sexual frustration conflict, and that lies that in the temporal lobe. So what happens is this is a very nuanced subject, but a lot of people ask, what do you mean by sexual frustration?
Mm-hmm.
Sexual frustration, in the terms of nature, means the circumstances for procreation are not available to me. So, for a female, in order to be safe in nature, she has to feel like, should the opportunity to arise for me to give life, I would be safe to do so. So you have to understand with the menstrual cycle, it means that everything that's going on in the body on a minute to minute, daily, 28-day, or longer or shorter cyclical basis is for you to procreate. It's
Mm-hmm.
literally shifting every single day so that should the circumstance arise for you to get pregnant this month, we can assure that. Yeah? So,
Yes, carry on, carry on. I'll ask in a
yeah.
minute.
Okay, yeah. So everything in the body is working to ensure that. So what that means is in order to feel in a harmonious state as a female, one needs to feel safe enough to get pregnant. All right? And this is sort of contradictory to what we see in modern day society. And by the way, it doesn't mean that you should choose that way. Like, of course, you can choose not to get pregnant or you can track your cycle. I mean, I do that as well. But it means that in natural terms, our female biology is having a cycle for a reason, and
Mm-hmm.
that reason is procreation. And so, in order for the female to actually feel harmony in her nervous system, to feel in alignment with the calmness of her nervous system, she needs to know, she needs to feel safe enough that if she were to get pregnant, that would be okay. So, what does that mean? Circumstances for procreation are not available to me. Well, that's a conflict. So, anything opposite of that throws the female off her harmonious nervous system. So, what are examples of that conflict? It could
Thank
be,
you.
yeah, it could be I'm with a man, but I don't envision him as the father of my child.
Hmm.
In our biological nature, that is a big point of tension for the female where she's already living in a contradictory state. Oh, I'm with this man, but he's very immature, he's unreliable, he can't provide, and I could never foresee him being the father of my child. Okay, that's already a conflict in nature. Another conflict could be I'm a single female, I have to fend for myself, nobody's coming to save me. That's another conflict in nature. Actually, in the female nature and in the masculine nature, in our human nature, we're not designed to be alone. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
actually designed for companionship, and it makes us safer for survival when we have others that will help protect us.
Hmm.
That's just nature. So that is a sexual frustration conflict. I'm single, I'm alone.
How would that,
Another, yeah.
sorry to interrupt, how would that show up in the body? Say if somebody wasn't necessarily conscious of those thoughts, but their nervous system would be thrown off, how could you almost see the clues to go, oh, actually, this is something that my body is not aligned with?
Right. So how you see that in the cervix, right? Because it corresponds to the cervix. You could have actual cervical programs, right? So you could have growths on the cervix. You could have irregular periods. You would also have pain during menstruation. So what's going on is that sexual frustration conflict is being programmed at the cervix. So when I'm active in this conflict, so when I'm feeling like, oh my God, circumstances for procreation are not available for me, and I'm
Right.
not safe in my femininity, the cells in the cervix, they ulcerate. And then when you resolve it, so maybe let's say you're a single female and then you finally meet a man and you feel really great with him and you feel really safe with him and you feel like this could be the father of my children, all the cells that were ulcerating
Yeah.
in conflict activity, when you go into the repair phase, they are replenished. So you have cellular proliferation. So the tissues are constantly changing. So when you get a pap smear, that's actually what they're looking at in your cervix. They're looking for tissue changes. And I have news for you, females, that all females are going through cervical tissue changes all the time because every female is in and out of this. So yeah, it can manifest at the actual organ level, but in the temporal lobe, how it manifests is it's fluctuating our hormones. So when I'm a right-handed female, it's falling on my feminine side and it's making my testosterone go up. So it's a very wise and biological adaptation because what my body is doing is going, oh my God, we're in a sexual conflict. We have to fight and like fend for ourselves. We're not going to have a man that's going to come save us. So what can we do for us to adapt to this? Well, the body is wise and says, I know what I can do. I can lower estrogen and I can heighten my testosterone. So that way I'm more action oriented. I'm looking more at the world through the perspective of the masculine, which is more my territory, so that I can go out there, accumulate resources, accumulate my territory, and fend for myself.
Hmm.
So this is why you have this sort of idea of and mainstream society looks at this too. Oh, what's with this masculinization of the feminine and the sort of feminization of the masculine? Well, when you understand it, you're like, oh, well, when a female goes through a sexual conflict, she's not safe in her femininity, the circumstances for procreation are not available for her, she's going to become more masculine. And if you look at our modern day society, do you think women go through sexual conflicts?
Hmm.
Yeah, all the time. All
Hmm.
the time. Do you think the majority of women who are single, who are modern day women, feel harmonious enough that if they got pregnant tomorrow, they'd be happy with that?
True.
No, they probably wouldn't be. They'd probably panic and they'd probably freak out.
Yeah,
And
you're right.
so So what it's really interesting is when I work with women, I notice this. It's a complete denial of our biology. When you understand that your biology and your cycle is designed so that you will procreate, so that you can be the life giver, so that you can hold this sacred honor in nature, when you understand that, you get, oh, I understand what it means to feel safe in my femininity. It
Mm-hmm.
actually means that I understand this biological role that I have. I understand that the relationships I form with the opposite sex, I need to feel safe enough with that person that that could be a parent to my future child. I need to feel safe enough that my nest, my home, my environment is nourishing for me to, should I one day choose to give life, that I would have the option to. I need to feel safe enough within my femininity that I'll trust the relationships around me
Mm-hmm.
so that I can cultivate those in a way that it relates to my biology, my
Yes.
tribal clan. So when you look at things that way, you understand, like, okay, what does it actually mean to embrace my femininity? And one thing I think is important is to start there, to not deny yourself of motherhood, that it is your birthright. You
So
were put
that
on this earth to do it.
just what I was just gonna lead into.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time understanding how some women don't want children just because that had never been a thought for me.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a biological conflict? Is it something that, but if they're, do you know what I mean? Say
Yeah.
they feel feminine, but they don't
Yes.
want children, but they don't feel like anything is off. Is it a biological conflict? Is it truly just a choice? Like, what is going on there when women do not want children?
Right. So that is a really good question. So if you look at our biological nature as women, let's say, for example, a baby cries. Okay, when a female hears a baby cry, she can actually lactate and release prolactin. Women have oxytocin, which is the nurturing hormone. Yeah. So if you look at, and we have serotonin as well. I mean, all of our hormones are communicating in a way that actually motivates us to want to have children.
Mm-hmm.
So the female, which we'll call the alpha, alpha just means first. So if we looked at the female with no conflicts, so I encourage you to listen to our first episode that I did with Skyla to understand the foundation of this work.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the way that we use evidence within this biological wisdom is brain scans. So every conflict that is experienced actually is able to be seen at the brain level. So when we look at the alpha female, we can see on her brain level, she has no conflicts in the temporal lobe. So that sexual frustration conflict I was talking about, that lies in the temporal lobe, for example. There's others on the masculine side as well. She has none of those. So if we scanned the brain of the alpha female, she wouldn't indicate any conflicts in her temporal lobe, and that way we can use her as sort of the understanding of, okay, what is the female without any of the conflicts.
Right.
And she is always motivated to procreate, right? So
Right.
her cycle is harmonious, 28 days. She's balanced hormonally. She's very fertile. She will also have her period, her first menarche, at the age of 11, and she will be motivated to have babies. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we're like, okay, we can learn from this very
Mm-hmm.
scientifically. Okay, if that's the alpha, then I know if I'm a female, I have a sexual conflict. My estrogen goes down, my testosterone goes up. I look at the world more masculine, a little bit more territorial.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have to understand, it's like, we're looking at the balancing of hormones. Now my hormones are communicating differently. So my hormones might not communicate with me in the way that I would be motivated to have babies. And this we actually see in our society a lot, right? You might see that woman that you've known forever. She's been dating a lot. She's never really been motivated to have a family, have kids. And all of a sudden she meets a man and she goes, oh, I want to have his babies. Well, what is that phenomenon? What's happening? Well, actually, what's happening is when she meets that man, she's resolving that sexual frustration conflict. So she was in the conflict of circumstances for procreation are not available to me. Maybe she was having very long 33 plus day cycles. And then she meets this man and she's like, oh my God, he makes me feel safe in my femininity. I feel like I can belong to him. He's mature. He's a good provider. He takes care of me. He has this strength. I feel like he could be the father of my children. And what happens is she resolves that sexual frustration, hormones balances out again. And now her hormones communicate with her in a way of like, oh my God, I want babies. Yeah.
Right.
So when you understand it this way, yes, so to speak, if we were looking in general terms, if a female doesn't have any motivation or any desire to have babies, that would be a conflict. And it's just not biological in nature, right? If every female felt that way, well, we wouldn't survive as a species. So there's a reason why our hormones communicate that way, and it's to ensure offspring. Yeah? So if you feel like, oh, I've never had that desire, I don't want that, or even more accentuated, that's something that would be very terrible for me, then it shows me, oh, okay, there's something there. And the more that the female can resolve her sexual conflicts, the more she might actually look back and go, oh, now I actually do want children. Now I have a harmonious 28-day cycles, I have pain-free periods, and now I might really, really be motivated to want to procreate.
Thank you. So say somebody's listening to this and they go, oh, I had no idea if I don't want children, I have some sort of conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Where, how can they begin to help themselves if they aren't even aware that that could have been a possibility? It's like, what do they look for? How do they start to move through this, even though they still don't necessarily want kids, but they just want to work through the conflict?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you start?
So I would start with your relationship to your femininity. So what external belief systems are you carrying about what it means to be feminine in the world? When do you feel like you lost your femininity? What are your biological symptoms? So how long is your cycle? Tracking your cycle informed in an informed way can help you understand, okay, like even if I look at my own, when I go through that sexual frustration conflict, let's say when I was a single female and I thought I met a man and then it didn't work out with him, I might even notice that that month my cycle was a little longer. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm understanding that. So tracking your cycle through this paradigm can be really, really helpful to start to notice what your tracks and triggers are. Also, what is your relationship with the masculine? Do you feel safe with the men in your life? Do you trust the men in your life? When it comes to relationships, do you actually stand by your honor? So, do you honor your body in your relationships with the men in your life? That's really important. So, the female always needs to feel safe with the person that she becomes intimate with. So, are you honoring that natural aspect of you that every man or every person that you are intimate with, you are cultivating a true feeling of safety, that if that man were to become the father of your child, you would be okay with that? And that sounds so archaic. I get it. Like, I'm a former modern day feminist female here, so I get it. But the truth is, in our natural biological way, that is the foundation. And like I've studied with the tribes in the Mayan cultures, and I've been with the Shipibos in the Amazon, and this is the way that you're taught as a female, that our sexuality is sacred, that there is immense spiritual, physical value in our sexuality, and that we need to carry that container responsibly, and beautifully and devotionally. So actually, it's very meaningful and very powerful to take back our own empowered wisdom of our sexuality and
Yes.
move in our relationships accordingly. And that's very foreign for most modern day women to do. But I actually find that it's a really big source of unhappiness, especially for the single female who is feeling like, oh, I haven't found that one yet. It's like, okay, well, are you already moving accordingly to finding that one? So are you already embodying that honor to yourself by not giving yourself to someone who isn't in alignment with your truth? Or are you compromising yourself? Because I think we as women, we do that.
Yes, and I've heard that come up a lot in females in my life who I've noticed over a time frame of, say, we're trained to be, depending where you're brought up, but I feel like in the general society you're really encouraging more of a masculine being by career driven, and that's great in some way, but losing the femininity a little bit. And I've just noticed as, say, certain friends get a bit older and hitting this age where they want children, they're becoming aware that they've been operating out of a masculine being, but they almost have no, they know something's not aligned and they want to embody this femininity, but they have no idea how, because just where do you begin with that of like, okay, they're still single, they do need to pay their bills, do all these things, running businesses, whatever it might be, but I don't think their parents know necessarily or have, say, an example to follow. I've noticed people be like, okay, I want to be more feminine, but how? Like, where do you
Mhm.
begin? How do you embody that? And I know it's different for each individual, but what would be some practices that somebody could start to just see what feels good for them?
Yeah, one practice could be immediately claiming your motherhood.
Mm.
So denial is not just a river in Egypt. If we looked at our ancestors, we would have been raised by our mothers, with the knowing and with the wisdom that we would one day be life givers. Now, this is not about meaning that you have to do that, okay?
Mhm.
There's still immense purpose in choosing not to do that. So, what I'm saying is, it's still your sovereign choice, of course, to not become a mother if you don't want to.
Mhm.
But the truth is that the biology and the cycle is designed for you to do that. So, can you claim that aspect of yourself that I have this creative force, I ovulate, I have this menstrual cycle, and it is there for me to give life and carry life. And that makes me an alchemist. I get to have this sacred gift of turning spirit into matter. And that is one of my roles as a female in the world. When I work with a client and I say, how does it feel for you to claim motherhood? They go, oh, like they get an actual physical reaction in their body where they're like, oh my God, that feels so foreign to me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, then there's something there. If there's a resistance already to that, then you have something to look at. So sometimes I would start there. How can we get to the point where we can start to claim our motherhood more, where we can start to understand, okay, yeah, I have this biological nature, I have this female cycle, I have ovulation. That's wonderful. And then I would ask, okay, so now taking that a step further, what does sex mean to you?
Mm.
And it's interesting because I work with a lot of females, who are working with fertility, right? Who are wanting to get more in touch with their femininity, to resolve their sexual conflicts so that they will be more fertile, so that they can conceive. So I work, with a lot of conception coaching as well. And
Mhm.
when I ask to the female who is struggling struggling with her fertility, when I ask her, what does sex mean to you? Oh, they have all kinds of answers. I love it. They will say, oh, it's about pleasure. It's about my relationship with my man. It's about communication. Maybe if they're more spiritual, they're like, oh, it's this like divine act. And I will tell you, in 100% of the clients I have who struggle with fertility, when I ask them, what does sex mean to you? They never, ever answer procreation. So they have all these beautiful answers, which are fantastic, but they never mention the fact that sex is to give life. So then I listen and I listen. And at the end of the answer of their question, I say, do you think you forgot something? And they're like, I don't know. Did I forget something? I'm like, yeah, you forgot that sex is created for us to procreate. That's why
That's
when
very
we see a
important.
man, when we see a man, we're actually communicating at this hormonal level. Our hormones are communicating, our pheromones are going with the opposite sex. So we'll be motivated to jump into bed with them and have a baby. And so it's interesting that I haven't come across a client yet who is coming to me for fertility who has answered that way. And I find it really, really fascinating because it's such a good indication of a mirror of where our consciousness is at. So I really like to start that way with women is can you really claim your relationship to your biology? Can you claim motherhood? Can you claim being a life giver? And that already will help a woman to start to feel safer in her true nature. And claiming that too, also, by the way, means if you're on a contraceptive, you want to probably explore whether that is the truest option for you because it's important to embark on a journey with medication with full informed information. So it's to understand that if you are on a contraceptive, that it is actually altering your biochemistry. You're not ovulating. In nature, as a female, you are designed to ovulate. If you're not ovulating, it's in direct contradiction with your biology and you are changing your biochemistry. So it's important to move with awareness around that. So that's another avenue you want to explore. Are you on a current contraceptive and does that really feel right with your nature and with your spirit and with who you are for you to continue down that road?
Thank you. You said that so beautifully and empowering and engaging. On that note of sex,
Mm-hmm.
it's so casual, and yeah, obviously there's so many perspectives in the world, but do
Mm-hmm.
you think it's detrimental in a way to our being to have such casual sex besides it just being like, oh, we just had sex, that person wasn't the right one for me, okay, cool, but is there actually an energetic, does it throw off your hormones long term? Like, do you think that, or know from biology, just the effects of like casually sleeping around and how that can impact you so much more than just a number?
Right. So for the female,
Mm-hmm.
in her true natural nature, she would not be able to have casual sex. So if you look at the female who has a lower sexual conflict, so her hormones are a little bit more balanced, she's closer to that alpha female, she wouldn't have the desire to do that. So she already instinctually wouldn't engage in casual sex because it wouldn't feel right to her in her nature, or it would be very, very difficult for her to do that, right? She would be intimate with a man and then really, really struggle internally after the act of just doing that casually, yeah, because her hormones are responding and they're flooding her system. So no, in nature, it wouldn't be casual sex. In nature, the female would need to feel safe with the man. She would need to feel she belongs to him. She would need to feel that she's not, sharing him with anybody else, that he's there for her, that he's supportive of her, that he's cultivated this in her environment. And Along with the five biological laws of nature, I also work with the family constellations, which is the work of Bert Hellinger.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the natural family systems. So when we look at the order of harmony within our family, it's really in synchronicity with our biology. And he talks about this too, that sex is sacred between the man and the woman, and it's to be held in that way of the family, that we are conscious beings that are communicating through this act, which is to give life
Mm-hmm.
and to honor that. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it is in direct contradiction with our biology to have casual sex, and that doesn't mean that you should guilt or shame yourself. There's no guilt, there's no shame. It's just it's becoming aware. If
Mm-hmm.
you're a person who would like to get in touch with your true sex, your masculinity, or your femininity, it is important to examine your relationship with intimacy.
Yeah, thank you. And I think with my upbringing, I'm aware of this, but I have people that I've spoken to and they speak so casually about it. Say you're unaware of that it just your belief systems are so casual. How would
Hmm.
you, because and you don't see it as like, oh, I need to work through this. Where would you begin? I'm wondering how to ask this exactly, but I'm trying to like share a way for people to almost see, oh, there is a conflict here if I am viewing this as so casual. Like, where do they begin to work through, or where do they ask questions? And is it the same with the relationships in their life, like you mentioned before?
Hmm.
But I, because I'm what I'm asking, I guess, is like, how do they even begin to know, or is it working with their belief systems, or is it their biology, or is it just what way can they start to shift and go, oh, okay, how do I, what needs to shift?
Well, I would say first figure out what it is that you really want. So let's say you're a female and you're having a lot of casual sex and you're dating. What is your goal? Is your goal to be in a committed relationship? Well,
Mm-hmm.
if your goal is to be in a committed relationship, then something needs to shift. If your goal was to just like keep dating and doing that forever, then I would say, all right, well, that's totally your empowered prerogative. So why not continue that? But if there's something that's disharmonious, so I'm having a lot of casual sex, I don't feel good after it, I don't feel like I'm on the path to finding a committed partner, I want a family one day, and I want to cultivate that relationship that's going to ensure a family, then I would say start to act in accordance with what your true values are. So determine what your values are, what you really want in a relationship, what you're looking for. And for me, when I don't have the answers, and I don't always have the answers, I really don't, and I surrender to that. I just look at nature and I just let nature lead the way. So, in nature, I understand, if I look at the harmonious nature, even of the family system, you have, even through our scriptures, we have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, the Father, the Mother, and the child. So, how can I work to just embody those natural aspects of harmony, right? And in Hellinger constellations, we look at the balance of exchange. So the balance of exchange means if I give a little, then he gives some more, and then I give a little bit more, and then he gives a little bit more. But what happens to us as modern day women is we compromise that and we give, and then we're upset because we're not actually maintaining a balanced exchange in the relationships that we have, right? Even if I'm giving my sexuality to someone with casual sex and I'm giving more than I really feel truthfully internally I want to, so I'm compromising my boundaries, that's not a harmonious energetic exchange. So it's really about reevaluating what your values are, to really sit with yourself and say, what feels really true for me? And am I actually living in a way that embodies my truth, or am I compromising it all the time?
Hmm. Thank you. And do you think, though, when you are intimate with somebody, regardless, because I understand people, if they want to have casual sex, okay, cool, that's what they want. But I still
Mhm.
think there's still like a tie being created that you don't know afterwards, maybe 5 years from now, you're still tied to that one person. So it's like, do you agree with that, or is there like a energetic kind of long-term effects here that people aren't aware of, that it's like, no, no, this isn't just like a one night choice and then whatever, you'll be over it tomorrow. You're now like tied to that person in some way.
Absolutely. So the womb is the point in which we carry life. So
Mm-hmm.
the womb is, some people like to call it the extra chakra, right? That we carry as women. And so, yes, any person who enters the womb, it's a place of, sanctuary. So yes, you would exchange energy. Sex is also an alchemical energetic exchange, because remember, we as women, we turn spirit into matter, and the act that turns spirit into matter is the sexual act. If we were looking at it from terms of energy, women would be the creatrix, the ones that turn spirit into matter, and men would be the creator, that sort of energetic generator that is holding, containing the energy together. That's why the male is penetrating the female and she is receiving. So she is taking on the energy, the life force of the masculine. So yes, it's really bonding. And I'm not a religious person, but I'm really fascinated by our ancient history. And so if we look at the Bible, which is, he's saying like no sex before marriage, but what he really means is like, what is marriage? Well, marriage is a union.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not to engage intimately before a union has actually been created. So sometimes when I'm working with a female client who's really open to it, who's actually working on healing her relationship with her sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And she needs time and space to do that and to heal, because we do as women, because we've encountered a lot of trauma. And so when she does, I encourage her to be in alignment with no sex before commitment. Right? So that's what the Bible was really saying. It wasn't saying, okay, purity culture, and I have to wait until I'm married and all this
Yeah.
stuff. I think it's been misconstrued. What our ancient scriptures were actually teaching us is like, no, don't engage with that before you've solidified a true union, before you've understood what this relationship is, before you've come to the point where you really feel safe with one another, where you really
Mm-hmm.
trust one another.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think because religion, maybe, because I agree, I'm on the same page about that. I think because that's not as prominent in the world as much as it was, those kind of learnings are lost a little bit. So it's like bringing that back in. I do.
Yes, and by the way, if you have had many partners, when I was in Guatemala on Lake Atitlan, we were going into the Temazcal, which is a Temazcal is sort of like a clay home that's built like the womb, and then it's heated like almost like a sauna. You're going into the heat, so you're entering the mother, you're going back into the womb almost as a rebirth experience, and you're working through aspects of yourself that you really feel you would like to heal. And one of the really sacred things that we did as women in Atitlan, in San Marcos, when we would go into the womb, is we would go through, every partner we had ever been intimate with. And so we'd really connect with our womb center. We'd go into this place of very intense heat. It's very hot in there. You feel a little bit delirious. So you're already at an altered state of consciousness. And then you're bringing back, okay, everyone who I've been intimate with in my womb, maybe every child you've carried, that didn't come into form. And you're really working on connecting with them, on asking for perhaps forgiveness. If you felt like you violated your own boundaries, you're forgiving yourself, you're forgiving your body. If there's anything you would like to honor with that person that comes up, whether it be gratitude, whether it be lessons that you learned from that person. Also, if you can't remember, Yeah, if you can't remember all your intimate partners, that's okay too. Then you're just really connecting with, you're going into the womb and asking to be connected with anyone who you were intimate with, including anyone that you might not remember, and what comes up for you around not being able to remember, right? And just releasing it. And so our ancient female ancestors, they would do this. So they would understand, okay, I'm cleansing myself
Mhm.
to really take my power back to become sovereign again. So it's not about, guilting yourself or shaming yourself if you previously, you know, were intimate with a lot of people that you wouldn't nowadays be connected with, or you wouldn't nowadays feel in alignment with. That's totally okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that empowerment is great. Thank you. Because I've read lots about just all of that kind of stuff, and I think it's so fascinating for this society because, I mean, my mother's always taught me just sort of how sacred it is, but I also know people who were taught how playful it is and things like that. And I thought, oh wow, that's so interesting. I never saw it like that. Like things like that, where I'm just wondering though, not necessarily what's right or wrong, but what is like what's true in nature. So that's why I was very
Yeah, so to
asking
be
you.
really like for the female, if we were just being super basic about it, what's true for the female in nature? The female in nature, when she has sex with a man, she envisions him to be the father of her child. So in nature, if she's having sex with someone, it's for procreation. That's
Mhm.
nature. That's
Mhm.
just what it's for. So the biological purpose of sex is procreation. So, for the female to live in accordance with nature and our survival, tribal, primal way, it would be that she is being intimate with a man who she could foresee being the father of her child. That if she got pregnant tomorrow, it would be wonderful.
Mhm. No,
Yeah.
thank you. It's so simply, beautifully put. It's nice to hear it and just share that voice with the world.
Yeah, and it's really funny because in modern day society, someone said this to me the other day. Oh, well, I'm sex positive, and I said, me too. Like, me too. I would like
Yeah.
to say I'm sex positive. Yeah, because I'm just really going into the truth of what it is and embracing that and embodying that and
Right.
feeling into what feels right for me in relationship with that.
Yeah, that's funny you say it like that. I guess I never thought in some people, if you were to think no sex before commitment, they might perceive that as not sex positive, but it's just a different perception of sex positive.
Right, and I'm not
Mm.
saying that's for everyone, but when I'm working with a female who is really wanting to go into healing her sexuality and to healing these conflicts and these traumas that she's experienced, it can be sex can become a really unsafe container. And so to really move through that container, it's important to do so with honor and to do so with grace. And so in that case, it would be really important no sex before commitment so that she really feels safe
Mm-hmm.
and she can reclaim her power in that container.
Mm-hmm. No,
Yeah.
thank you. And I wanted to speak about this because I know you work with so many women who are healing, but I feel like I know so many women who aren't necessarily feeling like they need to be healing, but don't embody that sort of natural nature's femininity. Do you know what I mean? Where it's almost like
Hmm.
until then they go, oh, I want to have kids, oh my god, I have so much healing to do. I want to be like, hey, this is how we can educate ourselves before that time comes up, so you're prepared. And it's not like, oh my god, there's so much I need to do before. Because I've friends now who want kids, they're like, oh my god, what do I need to do to be prepared? So it's like, well, hopefully somebody's listening to this maybe years before they're ready to have a child, but you can start that preparation, or how to sort of just bring more value to this world and thought process and embodiment along the whole journey, as opposed to just right before you want it and then there's a lot of healing to do. And or they people I know are trying for kids and then they have fibrosis or whatever, and it's like, okay, how could we shift from the beginning? What
Hmm.
How do we need to like And I think
Right.
because you've had such specific experiences in the Amazon, the culture is so different. We don't do that anymore.
Right. And I think, when my mom and I embarked on this journey, because I learned German new medicine through my mother, that's what we were really focused on. And that's what I became really focused on, is how do I get this wisdom out to the future generations
Hmm.
so that they never have to live in fear of their body. They never have to live in fear of symptoms in the body arising. They can understand what their true embodied nature is. And it's like getting the keys to the kingdom. So that was really our main focus. And when I got together with Dr. Melissa Sell, and we would do events or we would create courses, we were like, how can we make this appealing to young people? Because
Yeah.
my mom studied this, and your mom studied it too, like over almost 20 years ago now. And
Hmm.
it's a very older generation of people that is open to this work, right? Because it's usually like when you get sick, you look at every avenue you possibly can look at to
Yeah.
help you overcome a symptom that's chronic and just not going away. And sometimes we know it's like beating a dead horse. It'd be more beneficial to know this before you ever get sick,
Hmm.
so
That's
that when
fair.
you get sick, it doesn't become this self-fulfilled prophecy and panic and fear and paranoia. And you can really, really just trust your body and listen to your body and what it's trying to communicate to you. So that is why I've sort of really aspired to, create events that people can come to, and create online course programs for women of all ages. Even in the latest cohort that Dr. Melissa Sell and I just did, we had grandmothers and mothers, and then women who were trying to become mothers, and young women who are single and looking for a man. And so all the women could really support one another throughout the container on the journey, to say, if someone was trying to get pregnant, oh, then another woman would talk about her experience becoming pregnant and her home birth and her this, and then the grandmother would talk about her experience as a woman in the world, and now being postmenopausal and now not ovulating anymore. And everyone really supports one another.
Mm. Yeah, beautiful. I think that's lovely. And but I feel like that's unfortunately so niche. Like that's not necessarily kind of the standard women supporting women to be feminine. We support feminists. Like
Hmm.
that's like a socially acceptable concept, but I feel like in this day and age to almost want motherhood and be like proud of it is, I don't know exactly how to word it, but like not as worthy as striving for a career. I don't know
Uh-huh.
if you would agree, but I feel like I see so many people, and I used to be one of them too, is like, yeah, go, 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 build a business. This is great. And I still think that's great, but also not
Mhm.
forgetting our biology and why we're here and what we're here to do, but how to almost empower that. Or how does somebody who's like going through an identity shift of they were this version but they want to embody this version but they're sort of scared because other people might see them as this older version. Do you get what I'm saying? I know it's not really a question, but I feel.
Yeah, but I really think we're in a really unique time in the cultural diaspora of awakening. So I think it's really less and less niche. You have a lot of women that are looking at society differently than they had before.
No, I
Um,
agree. Sorry, I don't mean in that sense like it's a secret thing. I feel
yeah.
like it's wanted and it's needed and it's like
Mhm.
on the cusp of breaking it to be standard, just the new standard. But like how to
Right.
almost flip it so that that is not the, it's almost like that's mainstream again, even though you think
Hmm.
it's sort of silly that it's not. And
Hmm.
not that one is better than the other, but just like, I'm not sure exactly, but how maybe people can feel more open-minded to, or not in a way like guilty for wanting to just be a stay-at-home mom or something like that, like how to embody and encourage others that that's empowering too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't really ever feel like it's my responsibility to change somebody else's mind. That's not the avenue that I like to go toward. I am much more of the mindset of just really embodying your own truth and just like exuding that and letting that be a ripple effect. And it's funny because I think like I've experienced like a lot of people just come to me and ask me questions even if they're super modern and they want to ask me my opinion on dating and my opinion on their relationships. And of course, like I try not to give unsolicited advice, although sometimes I can't help myself. But
Mm-hmm.
when solicited, I'm so happy to share. And I really feel like it's not about trying to break through to someone who might not be ready to break through. I think it's just about living in alignment with your truth already highlights and contradicts so many things that are going on in like mainstream mass media manipulation. You know, like most women don't even know that like Gloria Steinem worked for the CIA and that the feminist movement was even created. And it's so interesting, like, oh gosh, like if you just go into like how the constitutions were formed of America and like, like when women got their rights to vote and what it really means to be citizens of the world, there's so many rabbit holes that you can go around. But I
Yeah.
think it's just the journey of oneself of
Oh,
understanding where are these belief systems that I'm carrying coming from, and are they actually coming from the truth of who I am.
no, I agree. And thank you for clarifying my question, because I completely agree, is just embodying your own truth. I just, what I see is that I feel like I see somebody wanting to embody more of what their truth is, but they don't know what that looks like, so the confidence isn't there, so they're still sort
Mm-hmm.
of outwardly this other version that they no longer feel aligned with. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what are those practices to step into that embodiment? Because I feel like the people who are shifting, from just from friends that I know and how they think, they they're you and I feel like we can just sit with ourselves and sit in a meditation, and then the answers are there, and that's great, and we can connect and feel good. But I see so many people who are like, that's so foreign. I don't understand. I need a bit more of a guide to get me to that point to then sit in with myself. So it's like, what
Mm-hmm.
would be some almost like beginner steps to
Yeah, just
start
working
doing?
on those sexual conflicts, exploring what your relationship with your femininity is. What does it mean to be in a woman in the world? What are my belief systems?
Mm,
What kinds of relationships am I cultivating? Just really starting simple there. At what age did I feel like I lost my femininity?
right. So
Mm-hmm.
almost sitting down, I'm just trying to put it, I know this is a little bit opposite of what we're talking about, but I'm trying to meet people halfway there, of like, here's a little to-do list to
Mm-hmm.
help get started. So almost sitting and journaling. What else? I know you have a beautiful practice. What do you do and put around in your environment to help create that space? Because I know you have like your sanctuary basically, and you've got so much going on there. But if
Uh-huh.
somebody, if this is, they're stepping into this world and they're like, I have no idea where to begin. Like, I've got my crystals here and they're around just to,
Yeah.
but like some people don't have crystals. Like, where do you get started with all of this?
Oh, like gosh, you are you talking about femininity in that sense or
It
consciousness in general?
Not consciousness, like that's a whole other conversation, but
Uh-huh.
it's still femininity. But I feel like when I set up a space and I've got my crystals and my sage and this and that, I feel like I can just sit into myself a little bit more when I do my
Mhm.
meditation. So just
Mhm.
asking you, besides those questions, which are great, like, are there, what kind of other little things that somebody could do to just create more of that space to step into themselves?
Right. So from the lens of this paradigm that we work with the five biological laws, we would always say that an individual needs to do what's in resonance with them. So if it doesn't resonate with you to put like crystals out or meditate or, put like 10 things in your gratitude journal, that will never ever help you if it's not in resonance with your psyche. So you have to do things that actually work for you, right? So when I'm working with someone as an individual and I'm developing tools, I'm really curating those tools for the individual. So, I might be woo woo and spiritual myself, but if I'm working with a client who isn't, I will find what works for her and what feels good for her and what tools she likes to do. And perhaps she really likes to write, then she might journal. I even have women I've sat and sang with in helping them to overcome their conflicts. Yeah.
That's what I was asking for is
Mhm.
what would be some examples? I agree, don't force yourself to do something if it doesn't feel right, but I feel like
Mhm.
some people don't necessarily know what feels right or wrong. So what could be some ways that they could explore in would like singing? What would be some examples that you've worked with other people in the past?
Yeah.
Take it or leave it. You don't have to do all of these things or any of
Mhm.
them, but
Yeah.
just what would
Well,
be like ideas?
one thing that's very helpful that I work with is the family systems and family constellations. So that's a very simple place to start because it's just about exploring your own family. And a lot of our belief systems in our psyche and the root of our conflicts come from, these situations and disharmony within the family order. So a lot of the times just exploring that and understanding, okay, this is the conflict that was created when I went through this within my family. That is really, really helpful. And you can also explore even like your own birth story. You could ask your own parents, what came up when I was born? What's the story of how I was born? That is really helpful, especially when people are feeling a little purposeless.
Mm,
A lot of the times there's a story of how you were born. Some people were, was I wanted? Was I
mm,
unwanted? Was my mom going through conflict? Was she excited? Was she trying for me? Did she have like five miscarriages before and then I came? These are all really, really important concepts because we are actually carrying the energy of that. And especially when we're in our mother's womb, we take on everything. So
mm.
even just understanding our birth story, how we came to be in the world, can help us really understand ourselves better or understand where we're just carrying belief systems that aren't ours. So, oftentimes, looking at your family like a mirror can help us to understand where we've taken on things.
I love that. Thank you. I think that's a really great sort of starting point because we've talked about so much and it's great for knowledge and education, but then people wanting to take action. Um, do you have, is one of your courses on that or is that one on one with you, the family order?
The family order, I incorporate the family systems when I'm one on one, but also in the biological woman's course,
Mm,
I also incorporate the family systems and family constellations. So when we're looking at things that women experience, like loss conflicts in relation to the ovaries, or
mm,
procreation implantation conflicts, that sexual frustration conflicts, separation conflicts. These are all conflicts that we experience so often within our family. So, yeah, I teach and explore different themes of the hierarchy, of the order, of how to maintain harmony, how to come to acceptance. It's really funny because in Hellinger's work, he doesn't believe in forgiveness. He
mm,
believes that forgiveness can cause disruption in the order because the mother and the father, it's like a pyramid. They're on the top of the family and the children are at the bottom. So
mm.
you use a lot of truth statements in becoming aware of patterns that might be existing in your family that are coming and seeping into the consciousness without our awareness. And it's usually when the order has been thrown off. And we see that, right? We're like, oh, we're treating our mothers as though they're our own children. Well, that's disharmony in the family order already. If you're treating your parents like children, you are little, they are big. Their
Right.
problems are their own problems and you not for the children.
Can you? just elaborate on the definition of order or what you mean exactly by that. Do you mean literally from firstborn to lastborn parent?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you're looking at Hellinger's work, the order is who's in the family system first, right? So your parents and are always the mother and the father are always at the top of the food chain, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And you are below, right? The father creates more order and discipline in the family system, and the mother is more nurturing. And it goes really deep into, whose sphere of influence are you in? If a female is really under the sphere of influence of her father, she will often be more masculine, right? So if she grew up in a home where her father was more the dominant one and looking after her, and she had to prove herself to him, and she wanted his love, then that can be a reason why she's a little bit more masculine than the child being under the sphere of influence of her mother. And the way in which we understand love and relationships comes through our parents. So, and we call this the flow of love. So a father shows his love to his daughter through the flow of his wife. So the way he loves her, the way he cares for her, the way he shows up for her, that flows down to his daughter. He shows his love to his daughter by the way he treats the mother. And likewise, the mother shows the love to the son by the way she treats the father. Yeah, so her love that she gives to the father trickles down to the son. And this is where we get like really into taking on things that are not ours, is because if we don't embody that hierarchy, so if parents give their problems to their children and involve them in the adult problems, that's already a disruption of the hierarchy. And like we've all been through that, right? Our parents have already disrupted that order by throwing their problems onto us. And so understanding the family system can be a really great way to recognize patterns and get rid of things that are not ours. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's very, very interesting work.
So, from when you say get rid of things that are not ours versus forgiveness, how is it, either is it verse or is it intertwined? Like,
Right.
what's the difference
So the
there?
forgiveness, yes. So thank you for bringing me back there. So forgiveness is what he was saying is, if I look at my parent
Mm-hmm.
in the constellation, in the family consciousness, if I look at my parent and I say I forgive you, I'm actually disrupting the hierarchy order, because I'm saying, oh, I'm above you. I'm the bigger person. I've come to a higher state than you, so I forgive you for what you've done. So instead, in family constellations, we would look at our parent and we say, I am you.
Mm.
I am given life from you. I take what you gave me and I acknowledge you in full.
It's so beautiful. It's
Hmm.
really like gratitude at, I feel like, its deepest level is
Hmm.
with.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand the perspective of forgiveness, and I understand what you just said as well. So it's like
Mhm.
just
The
that.
first law of the family system is that your relationship with your mother is your relationship with life. So when you come onto this earth, you have to cry for the attention of your mother so that she will come nourish you and feed you so that you will survive. So your relationship with her becomes your relationship with life. How much will you grab the zest, the nourishment of life is in direct correlation with your relationship with your mother. So if you're not taking life in full, chances are you're really not taking your mother in full. And it's really also about honoring the family system, honoring where you came from. If you have excluded someone from your family system, you are denying an aspect of yourself. So
Mm.
it's something to look at. Where are you denying aspects of yourself through the denial of your family of origin?
Wow, I love that. Oh, that's intense. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's fun. How though? I know that's another loaded question, but if you were to say, look at your mother, and there's so much pain there,
Mm.
and forgive me if this question isn't worded properly because I can't. It's it's not an authentic question to me, but
Yeah.
if you do look at your mother, I can just imagine some people who really feel so hurt or broken or unloved. How do they say I am you and feel like, I feel like that would just be heartbreaking if, you know what I mean? Like forget, I don't know, forgiving is kind of weird too in that sense,
Mhm.
but
So that's a great question. So one of the things that we look at in the family system is the consequences of their actions.
mm,
So it's about, it's say, let's say you have a parent that caused you harm, like your example that you're saying is, when we suffer because of that, we're actually taking away the consequences of that person's actions because it's not for the victim to suffer, right? The perpetrator should be left with the consequences of their actions for their misdeeds. And
mm,
it's not for the child to take it on. So when the child is taking on this like additional suffering,
mm,
one of the things that we do in the family constellation is we might look at our parent and say to our parent within the constellated system, we might say, you know, I leave you with the consequences for your actions. So it's about understanding where you may have taken on suffering from the misgivings or from the misdeeds of your parent, and how can you leave that with them and say, I'm no longer going to suffer for
mm.
the actions that you did. I'm going to leave those actions with you because it's not for me to take your suffering away from you.
Thank you. That's beautiful. If somebody though were to say that, but I can just see some like somebody, how do they believe that? How do they embody that? Because I feel like somebody who might have lived a lifetime of feeling unloved by a parent,
Mm-hmm.
how at say 50 years old or 30 or whatever do you go, I leave that with you? I feel like it's easy for me to go, okay, I leave that with you because I've always felt loved. But if I
Mm-hmm.
spent a lifetime feeling like not enough or unloved, and obviously it all comes down to self love, but how do you practice truly feeling like I am leaving that with you?
Right. And it's a journey. You might not feel
Mm,
that right away, but what we do in the family system is you start to recognize patterns. So
mm,
when you play it out and when you look at the disharmony from the eagle bird's eye view, you start to realize, oh, okay, I've taken on something that has existed within my family for generations that's not truly mine. And
mm,
you can look at it from the point of view that when you terminate it, you get to terminate it for everybody else, so that this is not just about your own personal journey, but it means that when you maintain this harmony, the family that you might one day create or the generations that come after you can profit, can benefit from the work that you did. So
mm,
if you view it more that way, of you understand that through taking responsibility for my part within my family system, I get to terminate this and I get to start a change that will have a ripple effect throughout my family tree. That this doesn't have to be my destiny, that this
yes.
might be what I experience, but I have the power to change my own fate, so to
Mm,
speak, in
mm,
carrying forward. And even one little act I like to do, especially this is a great one for women when we struggle in relationships, right? Because the way that we relate with men can often be very mirroring of the way our mother related with men. So a
mm,
great visualization technique is to just visualize the partner that you're with, the man that you're currently with, or you can use, the most recent one that you were with, whatever significant partner shows up in relationship to you. And if
mhm,
you just close your eyes and you envision this person standing right in front of you, notice how you feel internally in your somatic body. Notice what comes up for you as you stand in front of him. And then place your mother behind you. And if your mother stands behind you as you're in front of this person, do you feel stronger or do you feel weaker with your mother behind you? If you feel weaker with your mother behind you, it probably shows she had some shadows in her relationships with men, and it's making you feel weak in
Mm-hmm.
your relationships with men. If you feel stronger with your mother behind you, means
Mm-hmm.
she probably, displayed a good relationship with the men in her life, and it makes you feel fuller and more empowered in your relationship. So
Mm-hmm.
notice how you feel, yeah? And then if you feel weaker, if you feel stronger, start to put your grandmother, your great grandmothers, visualizing whatever matriarch comes up for you in the family lineage until you feel like, wow, I have this, army of women behind me, standing behind me, endorsing this relationship that I have with the men in my life until you start to feel really, really, really strong. Like you have this matriarchal force beyond you. And we do from our womb, biologically, we do carry the life force energy of all the matriarchs, especially our own mother. That was the womb that we came from. So when you can do that, you can start to analyze, okay, how am I showing up with the relationships? And how is that related to my mother? It's a good one.
Oh, yeah, that's a great visualization. Thank you. That's
Mhm.
fun.
And
Okay.
by the way, if you're a man, you can do that too and just place your father behind you and
Oh,
then put
good.
put
Hmm.
all the patriarchs in your family that way.
Oh, cool. That's fun. I
Hmm.
like that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Just what I meant to forgot about it a while ago, but that brought me back to it in that male and female dynamic of your parents. I feel like I've been very supported in watching my parents, my mom almost allowing my father and encouraging him to be so masculine.
Hmm.
But and like she would always say, let him do it, let him be the man. But I notice now in friends or just society, women wanting to do so much for themselves, but then wanting a masculine man, but then wanting to do everything for themselves, which I don't think anything's wrong with that because
Hmm.
I think just we're believe and even I used to be so I feel like I had to remember my mom being like, no, right, let him do it, like it's actually a gift in a way. But how would you like how do women empower that balance, and what way it, because I feel like it can sometimes maybe feel like they don't want people to be like doing too much for them because they want to be the givers. But how do you work with your mindset around that in that equilibrium? Do you know what I mean?
Right. So, I mean, a woman can make a man more masculine, but a man cannot make a woman more feminine. So if a female is looking for a masculine man, we're balanced in nature. Then she needs to be more in her feminine. A masculine man is going to be attracted to his mirror opposite, right? That's how the law of attraction works, right? You love the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
So then she needs to embrace her femininity more in her relationships. I really love also the work of Alison Armstrong. She wrote a book called The Queen's Code, and
Mm-hmm.
she says, like, she tells the story like a fairy tale where she says, gosh, there's that story of the princess who kisses the frog and he turns into a prince, right? Well, we can look at that as nature of like the power of us women to initiate a man into his full power and into his strength. But she goes, but likewise, I've also created a lot of frogs. So I've also, like torn down the masculinity of men, emasculated them, criticized them, made them feel like they can do nothing right, and then I've created a lot of frogs. So a really important place to start of just like what are our biological needs in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And for the female, one of our biological needs is to be loved, right? We need to feel that our partner loves us and cares for us and supports us. And we need to have that feeling of being loved within a relationship. So we think that, oh, that's what my partner wants. That's what he wants. He wants to feel loved. And we shower him in love in all the ways that we would want. But that's not the biological need of the man. The biological need of the man is to be needed, is to show him that he has a role in the relationship, that he has a purpose, that you need him, that he's necessary in your life, that his place in showing up for you is significant. So I say to women all the time, I say like, how unhappy would you be in a relationship if you're with a man and he just never showed you that he loved you? You would be miserable. You would feel like, why am I in this relationship? He doesn't even show me by his actions or by his words that he cares for me, that he loves me. So likewise, if you tell your man, I don't need you, ugh, you do it wrong every time, I'll just do it for myself, yeah, oh, you can't provide for me, so I have to keep working, whatever it might be, I'm just using general examples. But if you consistently show him that you don't need him, well, then he is miserable in the relationship because he's like, okay, then why am I here?
Yeah.
Why do you choose me? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to understand that the biological needs are different. And I think sometimes because of a modern day society, we as modern day women, we've have these really high expectations of the man. Like, I want you to be my best friend. I want you to be my soulmate. Oh, I can take care of myself and I don't need you. But also like, oh, internally, if you protected and provided for me, that would be great. It's like we are giving them this intense contradiction where now they're like, now they don't even want to go near us for fear of they might do something wrong, right? They're never going to get it right. So it's really, really communication. And we as women, we're kind of masters in hypocrisy of saying that we want something and then doing the complete opposite. We do that all the time. So, yeah, it's like recognizing our flaws. And it doesn't mean that toxic masculinity doesn't exist. That's not what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
I'm saying that toxic femininity exists too.
I
So,
agree.
both parties need to do the work to be aware. It's not just on them, it's on us too.
No,
Yeah.
thank you for saying it like that because
Yeah.
I feel like I'm used to telling people, oh, my mom says, let him be the man, give him things to do. I feel like you said it in a much better way to explain it because I'm like, all
Yeah.
I know is just from what I've seen, but I wasn't necessarily like verbally taught. My mom just, I think it was like, well, that works. So I think that's what's needed in a relationship to be, to allow somebody to do things for you, even though you can do them for yourself. It's almost like giving them the gift and the opportunity to do it for you. Sounds kind of funny, but yeah, thank you. No,
Right. And if we just knew how men view us, I mean, the real grounded man, how he views women, it's so beautiful. Like, we as women, we critique and criticize ourselves to no end. You know, it's really funny because from the biological nature of the man, he loves all women. He is committed to the feminine. Like, a man instinctually loves all women, but we instinctually as women, we don't love all men. No, 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 no. We are always, like I said, we're mothers, right? Biologically, we're mothers. So we critique men because we're looking for the best genetics for our offspring. So we compare our current boyfriends to the boyfriend that we had before, and hopefully he's better than the one that we had before. And if we walked into a bar, we'd look at every man to figure out the one that we wanted, right? This is why it's really interesting for modern dating is like, the modern female will say, oh, well, that man, he's got all the options available to him. And it's like, yeah, because we as women, we want the best one. So we're looking for that top 1% of the man. And yeah, that top 1% of the man, he does have a lot of women to be able to choose from.
True.
Yeah. And that's why we as women, that's also why we biologically compete with one another. So we compete with one another on our femininity, right? And you see this in relationships with your girlfriends that you might have this subconscious underlying competitive nature. And what it really is like you're competing for the most feminine one who's going to get the best quality man.
Right. So to say how you can make a frog a man, a man a frog,
Uh-huh.
are there are there certain actions that a woman can do to empower masculinity, or is it simply just totally embodying their femininity, or is there things that
It's
you can actually
embodying your
do?
femininity. It's just, yeah, stay in your feminine.
Okay.
Yeah. And I also think like that is the general biology law of attraction, yin and yang,
Hmm.
masculine, feminine. But I also really, truly, in my heart of hearts, believe that consciousness is a huge factor because, you know, the more you enter into conscious relationships, the less those things apply. Like me and my relationship, it's very self-aware.
Hmm.
So I think that, yes, of course, stay committed to trying to be in my feminine and embrace my nature as much as possible and honor the man in my life. But I really truly believe that when two parties enter a relationship consciously, and I've experienced it myself, a lot of the generalizations, they factor less in because you're just proceeding on this journey of relating with more awareness, and
Hmm.
you've both done the work, and so you relate differently than more unconscious relationships that are kind of working and operating out of their own shadow or the unhealed aspects of themselves that come up, right? So I think, yes, stay in your femininity. Wow, is it ever crucial to understand the difference of our biology, of the way our brain works, of the way that we relate to the outside world. It's so useful, but at the same time, there's no need to get dogmatic about it.
Yeah.
I believe at the soul level, we encounter the beings that we are meant to be in a relationship with for a reason,
Hmm.
for our karma or for our dharma. And so our relationships are important. Like people ask me about sort of, soulmates or karma or karmic relationships. And I think it's really important because there are karmic relationships. So those are the relationships that we encounter this person to learn our lessons. But
Hmm.
then we have our dharma, which is our destiny, where we are coming into relationship with this person for our life path, to fulfill our purpose on this journey of life. And that's our dharma. So I like to say that unhealed shadow aspect of relationships, it's like we stay in this karmic loop. And when
Hmm.
we actually embody our destiny, our path, we get into the dharmic relationships, which is that we are coming into alignment with, our opposite partner, where we get to really grab the zest of life, where we really get to be a creative force to create dharma on
Hmm.
this path versus creating the karma.
Oh, that was nicely said. Thank you. That's
Hmm.
fun. I love it all so much. It's true. No, the awareness, it's funny. It's all of these details, but it really just is consciousness and kind of your own inner work and then growing from there and attracting from there.
Yeah, because a lot of women, they find this path, and then then they're really dogmatic about femininity and
Mm.
masculinity, and it's not. Like I would agree with modern day society that depending on our conflicts or depending on our constellations, like that's the blueprint of our personality. And so it does create like a spectrum of where we fall, of
Mm.
how this language of our hormones, our pheromones, our relationship to our sex, to our sexuality, are communicating and adapting and shifting. And so it's not for us to get black and white about it. Like I work with a lot of women who discover these tools, who discover this wisdom, who understand, wow, how far off the beaten path they've gotten with the truth of who they are. And then they're like, great, now I want a baby. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Does your ego want the baby? Like, is that
Mm.
your intellectual mind coming in and learning a body of work and now thinking that a baby is going to solve all your problems? Or now they're like, okay, well, now I just need to find like a man who's going to be my husband, who's going to protect and provide for me. And I'm like, well, that's again your ego. That's not going to necessarily solve your problems. That's still not taking radical responsibility for your life. So I think that's a really important aspect, because that's a slippery slope that I see so many
Good
women go
point.
down. Now they know this, and now they're like, oh, okay, well then fine, then I'm just gonna be in my feminine and find a man to protect and provide for me, and then I'm gonna have babies, and that's gonna solve all my problems. It's like, no, then you're just gonna have a slew of other problems. So
Right, right.
yeah.
It's true. Yeah,
Mhm.
I've definitely seen people do that too. But
Yes.
that's just, it's almost the ego mind acting, thinking that if you just simply make that choice, then
Yeah, and then for the women, isn't that again just another masculine way of relating to this through your intellect and through your ego and through your logical mind versus like just surrendering to the truth of who you are and allowing life to show you what that is?
mm,
I think the most powerful place is to be in the state of not knowing. It's like, okay, I don't know. I don't have the answers. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know who I am. Great. So show me.
yeah, that was me an hour ago. I was like, all right, I'm sitting on the magic carpet ride, surrendering to the flow. And it is a little bit scary, but it's also exhilarating as well. And just trusting that, well, that was actually something that um, my just own perspective of like surrender, that's sort of way off topic, but if you don't have a man in your life, you can still surrender to the divine in like protecting you, and you don't necessarily need a male right here right now to feel like you can sit back into your feminine, but you can do that first and then trust in, like, I quotations say God because it's like whatever that is to somebody, but surrender to that power of like the divine masculine almost.
Right, yeah, of course. I mean, your relationship with your femininity is your God-given birthright. You don't, that doesn't need an external party for you to be in synchronicity with your nature. No, that's why I say, like, I just always look to nature. Nature goes in cycles. Nature can be tumultuous. Nature gives life force. Nature is not perfect and yet is perfect. So, yeah, you absolutely don't need any external party, any external person, any external, path to get to the root of decoding, unwiring, unlearning.
Mm-hmm.
I like to just think of it like building a house, and you gotta rip the old one down and create a really solid foundation. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you have that solid foundation, a beautiful house can be built.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can start now.
Hmm.
Wow. Thanks, Tash. As always. I'm like there we could go on forever, but there's
Yeah.
just so
It's a
much.
long topic. Yes.
Yeah, well, it's like never ending too, of so many different directions, and then like you said, they're all little components, but it's how it works together. You can take some, leave some. It's constant flow of just awareness,
Yeah, and
really.
if you listen to the first episode I did with Skyla, I'll
Mm-hmm.
break down the five biological laws of nature, what we're sort of talking about when I get to the conflicts or the emotional
Mm-hmm.
roots. But what this work really has done is it's allowed me to, now I already know how my biology works, how the conflicts that I experience create my body to adapt and manifest in different organ and tissue changes, right? So first I understood that. I understood the language of adaptation that my body is experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
the way my biology works. And then this foundation, this became like a whole other avenue for me of like, I can use that foundation of that body of work to understand my true nature, to
Mm-hmm.
understand how I am as a woman in the world and how do I relate to others.
Mm-hmm.
So that was sort of the transformation in, okay, I can take this body of knowledge to better understand the way I move in the world and how I relate to others. And that's the same thing I did with the family systems. I can take this harmonious natural law that exists within the family consciousness, and I can use that to better understand who I am and how I show up in the world. And I now can take that education and share it with others.
Yeah, and you can still run a business, say, i- but in a feminine way, because I feel like there's this perspective where if you're in business, well, you need to be more masculine because that's just what it is. But you can actually operate in business, but in your femininity and in your conscious body, true self.
Right. And I just really like to think of myself, I'm just a teacher. I'm just a teacher. I'm just recognizing patterns and showing a different way. And I
Hmm.
think that's very feminine. And I
Hmm.
mean, women were the medicine women and the wise ones, and they were relaying information. I think, if I'm correct, we're just one of three mammals that goes through menopause. And if you look at even the biological purpose of menopause, why would we go through a phase of our biological journey where we no longer ovulate? Why would nature create that if there's just like three mammals in our planet right now that do that? Why? Well, I think that we've come to the realization now that it is for information, because women do live longer than men. So there must be a biological reason to that. Why would a woman live longer and then lose the right to procreate? Ah, okay. Well, it can be for information so that she can pass along, she can stay alive to protect and care and pass along the wisdom to the offspring. That would be the biological function. So, yeah, when I look at what I do, I think it's very feminine to teach, to share your wisdom, and I think everyone has their own gift. Every female has their own gift. So to share your wisdom, I think is the most feminine thing we can do
Hmm. No, I
in
agree.
whatever arena that might be for you.
Hmm. Yeah. No, it's great. Where can, I mean, I'll share information, but how can somebody get in touch with you, or what kind of programs? I know you're doing events all the time. Where are they shared? How do people hear about it?
Yeah, so I teach a course with Dr. Melissa Sell called Biological Woman. So you can go to drmelissasell.com and find the information on that. You can follow me on Instagram at Natasha Nazerali, and I post about the courses and the links on there. I do once a season in person events, all with the paradigm of the five biological laws or German New Medicine. Our next one is in Austin, but that one is actually already sold out. So we have 70 people coming in for that one. I hope to do another one in the spring and have some more online courses I'm working on for the spring. And if there's something that you want to work with individually on your own experience, I work with women one on one. So that's always an option available. If you want to explore this paradigm in your own life, you can. And if you're into all things woo woo, I also do intuitive sessions with people. I have a studio in Vancouver and I work online. So there are a tons of options if you get connected with me. And if you're looking for free resources, I always advise learninggnm.com to be an amazing free resource about understanding your biology.
Hmm. I love
Yeah.
that one. So many
Yeah.
times I'm like, this symptom in GNM, and then it gives me some
Yes.
awareness, and I'm like, all right, okay, makes sense.
Mhm.
Everything. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, well, thank you so much, as always, for being my best friend and sharing your voice with the world and your passion and your love and your light, because I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, I feel privileged that I'm your friend.
Me too. Me
Like,
too.
lucky me, I get to talk to her all the time. But this is some of the fun stuff we talk about sometimes. But Tasha has such a knowledge and insight and passion about all of this. I just want her voice shared with more.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today.